Okay, so we continue our talk of risk management here. We already talked about what risk is, that it's essentially uncertainty, and we talked about risk utility. Now, let's talk about identifying risks. How do we identify potential risks? We said that it is really important at the beginning of the project to identify the risks or potential risks associated with the project. The more we identify, the better prepared we are. The more we can reduce the likelihood of unexpected events. To identify risks, we have a few tools that we can use. A SWOT analysis, as we've seen before, we know how to use it by now. It's our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We can also use a brainstorming technique where we sit down as a group and we brainstorm potential risks. This comes from past experience, from knowledge about the project, talking to others. We sit down and we brainstorm. There are no bad ideas at first. We're going to come up with a pool of potential risks, and we're going to start to narrow them down to what are the ones we're actually going to build response plans for, which are the ones that are actually relevant to this project. We can also use a Delphi technique. It's a very, very effective way of brainstorming, essentially. How the Delphi technique works is we have a group of people, let's say 5 people, and I ask them all to individually list down all the potential risks that they foresee on this project. Then I take all of this and I put it together into one list and I redistribute the list again to everyone anonymously. I redistribute that list again. And we do another round and we say, okay, based on what you know now, narrow it down. Do you have any more ideas? What do you think of what's been written? And we go through multiple rounds of that until we arrive at a narrowed down list of the potential risks we all agree on. That is called the Delphi technique. Very, very effective. Once I've identified the risks, the potential risks on my project, I need to put them into what's known as a risk register. And all this is a list, essentially. Here are my risks. I'm going to denote them as R1, R2, R3. They are ranked 1, 2, and 3. A description of the risk, the likelihood it could happen. You can even use a scale for that, a scale of 1 to 10. The impact, again, a scale of 1 to 10. What if it does happen? What's the impact? The response, what are we going to do if it does happen? And who's going to own that risk? Who's going to be in charge of tackling that risk when it does happen? That is called the risk register. Very, very simple way of making sure everyone on the team is aware of what's going to happen when a risk occurs or is triggered. Right. We can also assess the risks we've identified on probability versus impact to get a better understanding. So I draw a chart here where I put probability on the y-axis and impact on the x-axis. And I can take each risk that I've identified and categorize it. I can say that risks 1 and 5 have a really high probability of happening, but if they do happen, the impact is low. Risk 2, for example, has a really high probability of happening, but if it does happen, the impact is really, really high. What does that tell me? That tells me that, first of all, as much as I need everyone to be aware of all the risks on the project, I need people to be really aware of risk number 2. Hey, risk owner, I need you to understand fully what you're going to do when the risk happens or if the risk happens. I need to detail out well my response to that risk to make sure it's not vague, because this is a risk with a high probability, high impact. This risk assessment matrix helps me define my priorities, where I'm going to spend time and where I'm not. Now, when a risk does happen, what do we mean by risk response? What do you mean how you're going to respond to it? There's a few different ways of responding to risk. I can avoid it, first of all. Risk avoidance, which basically means saying, I'm going to ignore it. Now, that doesn't mean that the risk no longer exists. It exists, but I'm going to avoid it, right? Maybe the risk is small enough that I can say, okay, it's almost zero impact on my project. I'm just going to ignore this risk, right? Acceptance falls into similar lines. It's tolerating the risk, just taking no action. Okay, the risk, I've identified it and it is in fact happening, but that's okay. It's low impact. let it happen. We'll eat the cost. It's a very minimal cost, not a big deal. That's accepting the risk. I could transfer the risk. Transferring the risk essentially means shifting responsibility. So for example, a really good example of this is insurance. I take insurance out on my car. If I get into an accident, the cost of that car, that risk gets transferred to the insurance company. The insurance company pays for the damaged car, the fixing the damaged car, right? I'm transferring that risk. Companies take out insurance all the time on projects. They're transferring that risk to insurance. Mitigation. I'm trying to reduce the chance of the risk occurring. I'm trying my best on the project. If I foresee that the risk is about to happen, I'm trying to reduce the chance of that risk occurring. And this could be in so many different ways. Maybe I'm putting more money in. Maybe I'm adding more resources to the project. Maybe I'm delaying an activity to better weather, for example, if it's a construction type of activity. I'm trying to mitigate that risk, reduce the chance of it's happening. And finally, escalating the risk. Okay, the risk has happened, or something, the issue has happened. I need to escalate this to someone with higher authority than myself to make the call, to make the decision. That is called escalating the risk. Right, we've covered quite a lot of things related to risk management here. We've talked about risk response, we've talked about risk utility, we've even assessed risk in terms of probability versus impact. Risk management is a huge topic of project management, and we've covered it from a very high level here, things to just simply be aware of as you work through a project. Okay, we'll stop it here, and we'll see you on the next one.